Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. The Barbados Senate met hard at the heels of the recent court ruling which deemed its 18 of 21 members properly constituted. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday 21st March 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. The Barbados Senate got down to serious business to debate the constitutional motion to lower the age requirement for anyone entering the Senate. More in this Barbados Today news item.
Leader of government business in the Senate, Senator Lisa Cummins, made clear that the youth voice is critical to the country.
Government is proposing in this amendment bill to introduce for the first time the opportunity for young people here in Barbados to bring their voices not only to social media, not only to written newspaper articles, not only to their public advocacy, not only to boards and to directorates, not only to sitting in fora where they are given opportunities to share their views and then they go away. We are giving an opportunity, Mr. President, because we believe that there is agency and there is value in our youth. We want to be able to bring that voice into the highest decision-making body in our government, which is the Senate of Barbados. And
in his first contribution to debate in the upper chamber, Senator Andwele Voice urged his colleagues that inclusion and representation of various groups is key to true democracy. He told the chamber the amendment to the Constitution is a way to get more youth involved in the decision-making process.
We wring our hands often in this country about how to get the nation's young people to participate in democracy. The amendments before the House this afternoon, Mr. President, represent one way that we can do, one necessary way that we can do just that. Our Prime Minister has called us all, but particularly our nation's young people, toward active citizenship. We cannot achieve active citizenship, Mr. President, if a swath of the nation's population is required by law to sit on the sidelines.
The upper chamber also assessed the national budget during debate on the Appropriation Bill 2022. Independent Senator Crystal Drake today suggested that one of government's key measures in the financial package, the Pandemic Contribution Levy, could have been structured in a different way.
Was there enough scope to look at assets and taxing assets that are stocked, they are reserved for those in society who have the wherewithal to pay a lower rate, but it will gain you a higher rate of return in terms of the amount of tax that you get back, because you're now looking at a wealthier set of individuals. So you're taxing things like fixed deposits that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in them. You're talking about personal trust, Mr. President. And if persons say, no, I don't like that idea, who are wealthy in our society, my next question then, Mr. President, would be, would you rather live in a society where people are hungry and the proportion of that society is growing daily? Their children are hungry. And as Bob Marley said, a hungry man, Mr. President, is an angry man.
Over now to Trinidad, where if one's purpose on earth is to make a lasting impact that would span generations, then Professor Selwyn Ryan did well with the life that he was given. During his funeral service at the St. Finbar's RC Church in Diego Martin in Trinidad, there was reflection on Dr. Ryan's education, his contribution to country, and his passion for wanting to see people filled with knowledge. Alicia Boucher of TV6 News has more.
Political scientist and author Dr. Selwyn Ryan has left behind a legacy as an intellectual, a prolific writer, and a man who sought to impart the rich knowledge he had attained during his life's journey to others. In delivering the eulogy at the farewell service, Dr. Roy McCrae recalled how Professor Ryan's thirst for education started and progressed, and how the post-World War II era molded him.
When issues of nationalism, self-government, constitutional reform, independence, and decolonization had entered a new stage of their history.
Fascinated by Dr. Eric Williams, Dr. Ryan published a book of approximately 900 pages on the PNM leader. But there are over 20 books to his name, including an autobiography to his legacy as an author. Dr. Cree, who worked with Dr. Ryan for 28 years, said he belonged to an intellectual pantheon of people like Lloyd Best, George Beckford, Carl Stone, Eddie Green, and others, who were driven by a socio-political consciousness on issues on nationalism, transformation, and change. As a professor, he mentored many, giving them opportunities to grow in the education arena. Dr. Cree said Dr. Ryan's pioneering of political polling alongside Eddie Green would remain one of the major accomplishments of the legacy of the late scholar. As for his integrity,
Ryan's loyalty and commitment to the highest principles of intellectual endeavor was never for sale and could never have been bought.
In tribute, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley called Professor Ryan a brave and confident man who was willing to take on serious issues in TNT, like race, religion, and class, standing on the basis of the facts garnered from his research.
But Professor Ryan wanted to know what these things were. And he found them, recorded them, spoke about them, spoke to them, and educated us, even when we resisted the education that was provided by such research.
Dr. Rowley said he had great respect for Dr. Ryan, revealing that he did ask him to commence a similar task to what he had taken on in the book on Dr. Williams.
I did discuss with him the possibility of him doing it again. Not about Dr. Williams, the man, but about PNM, the organization. And he did agree that it is something that should be done.
Prime Minister stated that the PNM is important to the history of TNT, and he is hoping that someone would take up the mantle in continuing the education and research that Dr. Ryan lived for. He said Dr. Ryan had a humble spirit and was also a good listener, and because people felt that they were being heard, he was able to penetrate them with his knowledge.
Sir Ryan was one of the brightest lights that shone in the West. Whether it was in academia, as a columnist in the newspapers, as a commentator, as a pollster, as a mass player, or simply a Fed partner. I'm proud to have known him and to have shared moments with him.
Professor Ryan passed away on March 12th at the age of 86 after battling health issues for the past 2 years. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. The Ministry of Health, Wellness, Elderly Affairs has warned that St. Lucia is by no means out of the woods in terms of COVID-19 and continues to emphasize the importance of COVID-19 vaccination, even at a time when the country notes a significant decrease in the number of reported cases of COVID-19 infections. Don Nicholas of the DBS News World reports.
This week marks 2 years since the first case of COVID-19 was reported in St. Lucia. During this time, there has been devastation that this dreaded virus caused locally and globally. But to date, St. Lucia has attained a COVID-19 vaccine coverage of 29%. This accounts for approximately 52,852 persons being fully vaccinated. Another 3% is partially vaccinated, and 6,908 boosters have been administered. As a result, the ministry warns that St. Lucia is not out of the woods.
The COVID-19 virus isn't going away anytime soon. The COVID-19 pandemic will not end anywhere before it ends everywhere. Further, we know that low vaccine coverage makes us more vulnerable and increases the risk of the country for the likely emergence and circulation of new variants.
The ministry asserted that safe and effective vaccines, which are at St. Lucia's disposal, are a game-changing tool. However, health officials would like to remind the public that it's not the vaccines that will stop the pandemic, it's vaccination that will do it.
COVID-19 vaccination have been integrated into all our primary care services. Vaccines can be accessed at all the wellness centers across the island. Equitable access to vaccines is our priority, and as such, the ministry ensures that every individual in every community has access to vaccines for their protection, particularly the most vulnerable amongst us. The Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs therefore encourages you to take that personal decision to protect yourself and loved ones.
The ministry encourages the nation to be more proactive and less reactive. For the DBS News World, I am Don Nicholas.
Jamaicans are keeping a close eye on the new subvariant of the Omicron strain of the coronavirus that has already triggered an uptick in China and other parts of Europe. Details in this TVJ News report.
With restrictions under the DRMA to end Friday, Jamaicans have been reacting to the new threat.
We have to actually find a way to actually adjust this new normal, right? Mentally, we have to all be prepared mentally, right? And we all have to actually come together as one and not stigmatize anybody, right? Because that is the thing that really caused the problem in the first place.
2 years after, you have to be futuristic. And so we would have recognized, not just from the government's perspective, but would have recognized that this seemed to be something that is going to be here for a while. We wish it would go, but lifting some of the restrictions, I believe I was looking in that direction.
I believe personally that COVID done. That's my personal view. I still go out and wear my mask, and I still will encourage persons to wear their mask and do whatever they can not to catch it. But personally, as people living in Jamaica, I don't think, it's really going to bother us too much.
And after 2 years of restrictions, many citizens are just looking forward to life returning to normal pre-pandemic.
I'm just looking for the entertainment sector to reopen.
How has this pandemic changed my life 2 years later? In a positive way, it opened my eyes to know lots of conspiracies are out there, lots of lies have been told about this pandemic, lots of persons have suffered during this pandemic, things that, regulations that are in place didn't have to be in place.
So, it doesn't matter how long it takes. I believe if we work as a nation, if we work as a country, we might not see normalcy as is expected or as was before, but I believe we can get close to it.
And back to Barbados, that country's Minister of Tourism, Lisa Cummings, outlined a comprehensive plan to move the tourism sector beyond its traditional focus to help maximize the business of tourism.
Senator Lisa Cummings outlined a new focus while delivering the State of the Industry address at the Hilton Barbados.
We have to have a conversation around, especially in a post-COVID environment, how to get more from less. So even if we were to exceed our 2019 record year of 1.2 million visitors by the time the pandemic set in, what are we trying to extract from that volume? Even if we were to have lower numbers, are we looking at a higher quality of visitor? Are we looking at a longer stay of visitor? Are we looking at monetizing services that don't require people to move at all? Are we looking at exporting our goods and services using our traditional source markets and thereby expanding our market, doing the same things? It is the business of tourism that we are developing as we talk about. And we're trying to do it sustainably.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.